Now, if there's anything I've learned over the years as a dating coach for all you sexy single ladies, it is this one principle, and that is that getting out there and finding love is really just one big science experiment, all right? Getting out there and making it happen, it is just a matter of seeing what works and what doesn't work. That was supposed to be a heart that came out of this that didn't really work too well. Clearly, experiments don't work. Just like in your love life, it really is just a matter of getting out there, trying out a new relationship, seeing if it works, and then going with your gut. And sometimes you have this hypothesis, just like in science, where you go into a relationship and you give and you give and you give, and nothing really comes out in return because he's not actually investing himself into you either. And then other times in relationships, he's investing a lot into you, but you're not really feeling it. So the key to finding love is finding a relationship where both people are putting in their best effort to make the relationship work. And the key to being successful in all of this stuff is being able to read the signs when he is not interested in you. So in this special video right now, as part of the Sexy Confidence Club relaunch, I'm gonna be giving you the 7 signs that he is not into you so that you can move on and find someone better and say that magical 4-letter word, which is next, and find the next guy. What I've found sometimes in a relationship when it's not really working out is you're investing a lot into it and you're not getting much in return. So let's work with this analogy a little bit. Imagine you are the vinegar and he is the baking soda, all right? Sometimes when you kind of start investing yourself into a relationship, you keep investing, putting something into the relationship, but you're not really feeling much in return. You're not getting that initial feeling and nothing is really happening. And then sometimes when you're able to walk away from this dead relationship where nothing is really happening, then suddenly you're able to actually get into a much better relationship. And then when he is actually starting to give and give and give in that relationship, what starts to happen? Then you can feel it. And this is something that is a sadly huge part of my job, is not only helping you find a great relationship, but helping you walk away from the duds where they're not putting anything into it. And notice then, once you start having a good situation going, and let's just add more of that vinegar in there, once you get more of this going, it just builds and builds and builds on itself, and before you know it, the fire, there's magic, there's a connection in the relationship, and this is what you want to be looking for. So I'm going to be giving you these 7 signs you can use immediately to walk away from something like this and find something that is really working for you. So now what we're going to do is head on over to the studio where I'm going to walk you through these 7 signs that he is not into you so that you can move on and find something better. I'll see you in the studio. All right, so now let's jump into the studio, take off the lab coat, and welcome to the whiteboard sessions where I really help all the Sexy Confidence Club members dive deep into a specific problem that they are struggling with. So let's just jump right into the 7 signs that he's not into you. So you can say that 4-letter magic word, which is next, and find the next guy. So number 1 is that you just don't feel it. Have you ever been in a relationship where you keep putting more and more in it and you just don't feel that physical? And then what happens is you keep putting more of your emotional energy into it, and you start thinking that if you keep putting more into this kind of black box of nothingness, that somehow that black box is going to turn into a red heart and then you're going to be in a great relationship. Well, I am here to tell you that if early on in a relationship you are not feeling any of that authentic love, then you are wasting your emotional energy on the wrong guy. Because I believe, and I've seen this as a dating coach over the years, that emotional energy is finite, okay? You only have so much emotional energy to give. And if you think that you can be in kind of a casual relationship or in a relationship where you're hoping that he'll come around while at the same time keeping your options open, then you are absolutely wrong. You can only have so much emotional energy to give. And sometimes when you put so much energy into this black box of nothingness, then what it's doing is it's stopping you from being able to attract true love from a guy who is willing to be there for you, who is actually into you. So if you're feeling like he's just not into you, listen to that intuition. Really dive deep into that, because many times it can be true. The second sign that he's just not into you is that number 2 is that he's all audio and no video. What I mean by this is that audio is when someone tells you that they're really into you, that they really like you, that they want to spend time with you, that you're perfect, that they want to marry you in the future. I mean, all the bullshit in the world can be spewed through audio, okay? But video is where they're actually showing you those things, where they are canceling plans with their friends to spend time with you rather than canceling plans with you to spend time with their friends. Video is where they prioritize you over that little work thing that they didn't need to go to, and instead they actually want to be with you. Video is when he's actually investing as much of his emotional energy in you as possible, or as would be appropriate for where you are in the relationship. Showing is so much more important than telling, okay? So if you've ever been in an audio relationship and you felt no video, then I want you to comment below and say, no more audio, I'm only looking for video. All right, so sign number 3 is that you feel like Sisyphus, all right? Let me make sure I'm spelling this correctly. Sisyphus. Sisyphus is from Greek mythology, where he's constantly pushing this boulder up a hill as hard as possible, walking, and thinks he's going to get it, and then what happens? The boulder just rocks. The rock goes all the way to the bottom of the hill, then he has to start all over again. And it's a famous Greek mythology story, and if your love life feels like Sisyphus, or in a relationship you're in where you feel like you're starting to gain traction, he's starting to want to spend more time with you, he is starting to show you a little bit more video, but then he just starts to pull away again. And if you feel like it's just this back and forth, constantly back and forth, then chances are he's not really that into you, because the reason why that rock keeps rolling all the way to the bottom, all the way down the hill, is because he doesn't want a relationship. He might get emotionally invested at times and get into the relationship or start spending time with you and really like you or even potentially love you. But if he doesn't want a relationship, he will do everything he can. He will kick that boulder down that hill as fast as possible, and you will just be thinking to yourself, what the heck? I thought we were starting to make progress. So if you find yourself in that situation, then you need to say that 4-letter magic word, which is next, because you don't want to spend your life being Sisyphus. You want to be instead in a relationship where it feels almost like a snowball, right? Like, at first it might be a little bit small, but then before you know it, it starts growing a little bit bigger, and then before you know it, it's much bigger. And this is a relationship actually developing. Every healthy relationship I've ever been has started out as this kind of small thing. You like each other, you like spending time with one another, and then you both start to invest more. There's more of an investment. You start to invest more time, and it kind of just builds on itself, because neither of you wants to spend time with anyone else. Instead, you want to be with each other and then ultimately fall into love. And it's just this kind of ongoing snowball effect. So if you're finding that you're Sisyphus instead of being in a snowball relationship, then realize that this is not going to work for you, and you need to say that 4-letter word, which is next. Sign number 4 that he's just not into you is that everything with him is just complicated. For example, I just had a member in the Sexy Confidence Club talk about this guy that she's seeing who is recently divorced with 2 kids and has a job where he has to work like 90 hours a week. And suddenly now his car has broken down, so he doesn't have a car, so he hasn't been able to see her at all. And this has been an ongoing pattern for everything in his life. Right now it's his car. A few weeks ago it was like a new project at work. A few weeks before that it was something else going on in his life. Look, we all go through rough patches in our life, and sometimes you might be dating someone who is going through a rough patch. So if that's the case, and it's kind of like a one-off situation, or it's just a rough time in their life, of course, be supportive and be patient, because sometimes those things can pass. On the other hand, if you find that everything with them is complicated, even especially more so their past relationships, like the way they talk about their exes, it's just all complications and no kind of smooth relationships there, then chances are he's not really that into you, because he's just got these mixed emotions. So look, life is too short to live your life in a complicated situation all the time. If it's complicated now, then just imagine what it could be like if you end up getting married and having children together. Yikes. One thing I've seen with a lot of healthy relationships is that as they develop, there ends up being actually less and less friction in the relationship. It's actually quite normal early on in a relationship for there to be some friction, because it's really like 2 lives coming together. You're kind of figuring each other out, and you might have different viewpoints on different things, and that can create a little bit of friction at times, and you have to figure it out. And a lot of times that friction will break things up. But as a relationship develops, things should be more and more smooth as you get to know each other, how each other reacts, how you can trigger each other. And if you're finding that it is constant friction and it's constant complication, then you need to stand up for yourself. And this is what sexy confidence is all about, is standing up for yourself and being the type of person who doesn't take this type of bullshit. And by the way, if you are a complicated person, if you're constantly creating this in any relationship that you're in, then it's time for you to also take that hard look in the mirror and think, what are some things that you can do to start bringing more positive energy to a relationship as well? Sign number 5 that he's just not into you is that he just doesn't care about what you're doing in your life when you're not with him. Look, for starters, I don't want you to be with a guy who's some jealous who, if you're not with him, all he's doing is texting you who you're with, what are you doing, he's just all up your ass. I don't want that. However, at the same token, I don't want you with a guy who, when you are out and about, he's literally not caring at all, okay? Like, if you, let's say, for example, spend an entire weekend away from him and he's not at all texting you, he's not talking to you, or let's say you don't reach out to him for an entire week and all you hear is crickets on that text chain that you have with this guy, then there's a serious problem. When a man is starting to really fall for a woman or really is investing more of himself in a woman, she should be on his mind quite a bit, okay? And I am not by nature a jealous guy. Jess will attest to this. I'm actually sometimes the opposite, where I'm just like, yeah, go, be with your friends, do whatever you want, because I'm kind of an independent person myself. However, when she is, let's say, spending a couple nights away from me, she's on my mind a lot, okay? We've been together for 5 years, so like, I care a lot where she is, and I will sometimes just send her a nice note and she'll do the same with me. So if you're finding that he just doesn't care what you're doing when you're not together, okay, when he's not actually getting laid or any of those things when he's with you, then chances are there's a major problem here. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're not in a committed relationship with this guy and he doesn't care about what you're doing when you're not with him, chances are he's sleeping with other women. Hate to say it, but it's true. Sign number 6, get down here, is that your gut is telling you not to trust him. In a previous video as part of the Sexy Confidence Club launch, I talk a lot about your head versus your heart and when that process that a man goes through when he's starting to fall in love. But there's actually a third component to all of this that I want you to really be honing in on, which is that gut feeling when you're around someone. Because actually study after study has shown that our head tends to overthink things and overanalyze things, and our hearts tend to follow our emotions far too much. But our gut, that feeling you get in your stomach when you're around someone and something feels very off, that actually comes from a very primal part of our brain, and actually in many ways comes from our actual gut, our stomach. And what it does is it tells you when something is a little bit off. If maybe you've felt this even when you're just walking down the street at night and there's a kind of a sketchy character across the street and your gut is telling you like, this is uncomfortable, this is bad. Even if your head is telling you like, oh, I should be safe, there's other people out here. Usually you want to be listening to your gut. And the same thing applies to relationships. If your gut is just telling you that he's not all there or that something is off, chances are your gut is telling you something that your brain hasn't quite caught up with. So really hone in on that and really listen to that. And it's okay if your gut is telling you that something's off. It's okay to slow it down a little bit and see if this is actually going to turn into a thing or not. And finally, sign number 7, let's get all the way to the bottom, is that he hasn't gone public, all right? Going public with you, it kind of is like high school or middle school, right? You know, in high school or middle school when you're like going steady and everyone starts finding out that you're in a relationship. Well, look, adult relationships work kind of the same, where once you've decided that you really like someone and you want to invest more of your energy in them and you see real potential in them, the first thing that someone goes through is like, look, I want to introduce them to my friends, my parents, potentially even my children in the future. Chances are he should wait a little bit longer to introduce you to his children, if he has children, of course, than other people. But going public is a huge step, because what that is telling everyone, including you, is that he doesn't want to introduce other women to his friends or other people in his life. So going public is an incredibly important part of this whole thing. And if you're finding that you're in a relationship with a guy and it's been over 6 months, and he hasn't gone public with you, you haven't met any of his friends, you haven't certainly met his parents, and you certainly haven't met his children or anyone in his family, then it's very likely he's not committed to this whole thing, all right? And what I would recommend is if you find yourself in this situation, to actually talk to him about that. Be like, look, I'd love to meet some of your friends. Like, what are you up to this weekend? And really just, if you're at the 6-month mark not meeting friends, it's okay to actually want to meet some of them and have that conversation. And if at that point he's saying, no, it's not really happening, then you have to take a real hard look at whether or not the whole relationship's going to work out. So now that we've gone through all of this, let's go back to the science experiment. We can talk a little bit more about the launch. So there you have it. There are the 7 signs that he is not into you. So you can say that 4-letter magic word, which is next, and find the next guy. What is going to happen for a lot of you women out there who watch this video is you're gonna realize that the guy you're with or the last guy you saw, he just wasn't into you. And some of you might take this as a negative thing, right? Some of you might think that there's something wrong with you or that you just suck at relationships, and I'm here to tell you that is nonsense. You are here right now because you are learning, and you have to look at every single relationship that you get into as just an experiment. And it's not like an experiment, there's a failure to it. If every scientist who went into an experiment and it didn't go the way he or she thought when they went into it, if every time that happened and they started getting really upset, well, there wouldn't be too many scientists out there who would want to keep working at their field, right? They would give up. You cannot look at any experiment as a failure. You have to just go into it with the best intentions, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, then this is pretty cool, right? If you add the baking soda to the vinegar, this is what happens. It creates your heart. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We had a lot of fun shooting this video, and this is all part of the Sexy Confidence Club relaunch. And if you want to be a part of the community of women who are going through some of the same struggles you're going through and have me a part of that community, part of your life, if you did just find out that the guy you're with isn't into you, then come join us. We have an incredible community at sexyconfidence.com of women who are in the forum supporting every single one of you through the hardships as well as the successes that you're going to experience in your love life. And finally, if you did watch this video and you are moving on from a guy who just wasn't that into you, just comment right there below in capital letters with that 4-letter magic word, which is next, and just draw that line in the sand. No more investing your time into a guy who's not investing in you. Comment right there below, write next, and move on to that next guy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.